She mistook a millionaire CEO for the Busboy Cleaning Tables. But that mistake changed everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The soft hum of conversation filled the rooftop restaurant above downtown New York City. Golden lights glowed against the glass walls, reflecting the skyline like melted honey. Every table looked perfect, every plate a piece of art, every guest radiating confidence. But Ava Reed did not belong here. Her reflection in the window said it all. The second-hand black dress hung a little loose, and her old shoes had scratches along the edge. She adjusted the name tag on her apron, drew in a shaky breath, and whispered, "You can do this, Ava. One more shift." Rain misted lightly on the glass as the dinner crowd thickened. Ava moved between tables, balancing two trays, her steps careful, her smile practiced. Tonight was her 5th double shift this week, and the tips might barely cover rent for her shared apartment in Queens. Her dream of opening an art studio felt as distant as the stars outside. At the far end of the dining room, a man in a white shirt and dark slacks stood up from his seat, grabbing a towel from the service cart. A guest had spilled red wine across the linen. Without hesitation, the man crouched to wipe the mess. Ava saw him from across the room, rolled up sleeves, calm focus, no hesitation. "Oh, thank goodness," she murmured under her breath. Finally, someone from the new staff. She hurried over, clutching a clean cloth. "Hey, could you help me clear table 12 next?" The guest just left. Her voice was quick, nervous but polite. The man looked up, a faint smile tugging at his lips. His eyes were clear, gray, sharp yet kind. "Of course," he said simply. "Thank you," she replied, handing him the cloth as if they had worked together for weeks. For a few seconds, the world shrank to the rhythm of motion, wiping, stacking plates, folding napkins. Ava glanced at him again. Something about the way he handled everything felt natural, precise, not clumsy like most new hires. "You are pretty good at this," she joked softly. He gave a quiet laugh. "Old habit, I guess." Ava tilted her head, curious. "You worked in restaurants before?" "Something like that," he replied. When their hands brushed as they reached for the same glass, Ava felt a spark, an odd mix of warmth and awareness. She quickly looked away, pretending to focus on the silverware. Across the room, the manager barked an order. The man nodded to her and stepped aside to carry a stack of plates toward the back. The way he moved steady, sure, graceful, made Ava pause. She noticed the towel in his hand. On it, where the wine had spread, his fingers had traced shapes, circles, lines, almost like a sketch. When she leaned closer, she realized it looked like the outline of a city skyline. "You draw?" she asked, surprised. He smiled faintly. "Only when something spills." "Oh." Ava laughed, the sound catching her off guard. It was the first time she had laughed like that in weeks. "Well, you are officially my favorite busboy tonight." He looked at her for a beat longer than expected, eyes glinting with something unreadable, then nodded. "Happy to help." As he turned away, she folded the towel carefully and slipped it beside her sketchbook. Something about that little drawing felt different, like a hidden message she could not yet read. Outside, thunder rumbled softly beyond the skyline. Inside, Ava straightened the table and pressed her hand over the towel once more, unaware that the man she had just mistaken for a busboy was the chief executive officer of the very company that owned this restaurant. It was, without knowing, the best mistake she would ever make. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of Ava's small apartment in Queens. The faint sound of buses outside mixed with the distant hum of traffic. She sat on the edge of her narrow bed, sketchbook open on her knees. Between the pages, the wine-stained towel from last night lay folded carefully, the faint outline of that skyline still visible. She traced the edge of the stain with her fingertip and smiled softly. Her roommate Maya poked her head out from behind the door, holding a cup of instant coffee. "You are smiling at a napkin. Should I be worried?" Ava laughed quietly. "It is not a napkin. It is art." Well, kind of. Someone at work drew this by accident. Maya raised an eyebrow. Someone cute? Ava rolled her eyes but did not answer. She closed the sketchbook gently. I have another shift tonight. If I get enough tips, maybe we can pay the electric bill on time. Or maybe that art studio you always talk about, Maya said. Someday, Ava whispered. Someday when life is not so expensive. Oh, hours later, the smell of coffee and dish soap filled the restaurant again. Ava tied her apron, straightened her name tag, and stepped onto the floor. The evening rush had not started yet, and for a few minutes, everything was still. Then the elevator doors opened, and she saw him. The same man from last night walked in, wearing a simple gray sweater and jeans. He looked almost too calm for this place. Ava blinked, surprised. He noticed her and smiled slightly. Hi, he said. You are the artist who saved my masterpiece. Ava chuckled. You mean the towel? I am keeping it in my Museum of Accidental Art. That makes me part of history then, he said, stepping closer. Mind if I sit for a bit? She hesitated, then nodded toward an empty corner table. Sure, but if my manager asks, you are still a busboy. He grinned, sitting down. I will try to look useful. While she refilled salt shakers and wiped menus, they talked between her quick movements. She learned his name Adrian and that he worked in hospitality. That vague answer sounded fancy, but he said it so casually that she did not press for more. What about you? He asked. Waitress? Part-time artist? Full-time survivor? She replied. I draw at night when I cannot sleep. I want to teach art classes one day. For people who work late, shifts like me. But dreams are expensive. Adrian watched her for a long moment. Maybe not all dreams, he said quietly. She smiled, unsure how to respond. The manager's voice broke the moment. Ava, table 7. She hurried off, balancing a tray of glasses, and by the time she returned, Adrian had paid for a coffee he barely touched and was gone. On the table, he left a folded note under the cup. She opened it. Inside, written in clean block letters, were 4 words. Do not stop drawing. Ava stared at it for a long time. Something inside her chest stirred a strange mix of gratitude and confusion. Who was he, really? That night, back in her apartment, she spread her sketchbook across the small kitchen table. Between the pencil sketches of city corners and quick portraits of tired coworkers, she added a new drawing. This time, it was Adrian's face, calm, kind, half-smiling, eyes that seemed to see past her words. Rain tapped softly against the window pane. Maya passed by, glancing at the page. New muse? More like a mystery, Ava said. He says he works in hospitality, but something about him I do not know. He did not flinch once when a wine glass broke. Most people panic. He acted like he owned the place. Maya shrugged. Maybe he does. Ava laughed, shaking her head. Yeah, right. Millionaires do not carry towels and clean tables. She turned off the light, but the thought lingered long after. The next evening, as the dinner crowd filled the restaurant again, she caught herself looking toward the door every time it opened. Each time, disappointment flickered and faded. When her shift finally ended, she packed her things and stepped outside into the cool night air. The city lights glowed like spilled gold on wet pavement. Ava wrapped her thin coat tighter and whispered to herself, Do not stop drawing. She smiled at the words again, not realizing they had already changed the course of her life. Somewhere high above that same city, in a glass office tower, Adrian Vale looked down at the streets below. The towel with the wine stain sat framed on his desk. He reached out and touched it, remembering the girl who had treated him like an ordinary man. He did not know why, but he found himself wanting to see her again. A few days passed, and the rhythm of the restaurant returned to its usual noise and rush. But for Ava, everything felt a little different now. Between trays and table numbers, her mind kept wandering back to the man with the calm eyes and the strange talent for turning spilled wine into art. The folded note he left, Do not stop drawing, was taped to the inside of her sketchbook. She looked at it every morning before work, as if it were a quiet promise from someone who believed in her more than she did herself. That Wednesday evening, the sky over New York City turned a soft gray. Rain threatened again. Ava clocked out early and headed to a small coffee shop near the subway, her usual hideaway to sketch. She found her favorite corner seat by the window, ordered the cheapest drink on the menu, and opened her sketchbook. As she drew the reflection of streetlights on the wet pavement, a voice came from behind her. "You are still drawing." She turned. Adrian stood there, holding a paper cup. The same gray sweater, the same easy smile. For a second, she forgot how to speak. "Adrian," she finally said, "what are you doing here?" "Trying to get out of the rain," he replied. "Looks like I found the right place." He gestured toward the empty seat across from her. "May I?" She nodded, heart fluttering. He glanced at her sketches, genuine interest in his eyes. "You see the city differently. It feels alive when you draw it." Ava smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Maybe because it is the only thing I can control. Paper listens better than people." He looked at her for a long moment, as if memorizing the lines of her face. "Do you ever show your work?" She shook her head quickly. "No, it is just for me." "Then maybe it is time you shared it," he said softly. Ava laughed. "Right. I can barely afford art supplies, let alone a gallery." "Dreams start small," Adrian said. "Sometimes they just need the right hand to open the door." Before she could respond, a call came through his phone. He looked down, and for a moment his expression changed, professional, distant. The kind of focus she had only seen in managers or business owners. He excused himself to take the call outside. Through the window, she watched him talk, calm and commanding, while two men in suits approached him under umbrellas. He shook their hands with quiet authority. When he returned, he offered no explanation, only a gentle smile. "Sorry about that. Work never sleeps." "It is fine," she said, though curiosity burned inside her. As the rain intensified, the shop emptied. They stayed, talking about favorite books, street art, and the strange beauty of rainy nights. When he noticed her shivering, Adrian quietly stood and handed her his scarf. "You will catch a cold," he said simply. She hesitated. "What about you?" He smiled. "I have an umbrella. You need it more." For a brief moment, their hands brushed again as she took the scarf. It was warm, soft, and smelled faintly of cedar and rain. When they finally left the coffee shop, the city streets shimmered with reflections. They walked side by side toward the subway station, steps falling into rhythm. Adrian held the umbrella above them, tilting it slightly so she would stay dry. "This is nice," Ava said quietly. "It is," he agreed. "Maybe next time you can show me that art studio you are planning." She laughed. "Studio? It is just an idea. Every great thing starts as an idea," he replied. At the station entrance, they paused. She wanted to ask him who he really was, but something in his calm expression made her hold back. Instead, she said, "Thank you. For the coffee, for the scarf, for reminding me to keep drawing." "You are welcome," he said. "And remember, do not stop." He watched her disappear down the steps, then turned toward the street where a sleek black car waited. The driver opened the door, bowing slightly. "Evening, Mr. Vale?" the driver said. Adrian glanced once more toward the subway, his mind still with the girl who had treated him like nobody special. "Home," he said quietly. As the car merged into the glittering traffic, the city lights flickered on the windshield like brushstrokes of gold. Somewhere underground, Ava clutched his scarf to her chest, unaware that the man she had just shared an umbrella with was one of the most influential chief executive officers in the state. The night had drawn them closer, both holding secrets neither was ready to reveal. The next week arrived with the quiet chill of early spring. Ava's days blurred together, work, sketching, and quick naps before another shift. But every now and then, her phone would buzz with a new message from Adrian. Nothing grand, just short, thoughtful notes that always made her smile. "Have you drawn anything today? Remember to eat, even when work gets crazy. Rain tonight, carry an umbrella." She never understood how a man she barely knew could make her feel seen in ways no one else had. Friday evening, as the sun sank behind the skyline, she walked home carrying a bag of art supplies she had found on sale. Her phone rang, and Adrian's name appeared on the screen. "Hey," she said, trying to keep her voice casual. "I have a question," he said. "Are you free tomorrow?" "I have work until 4, she replied. "Perfect. Meet me after your shift. I want to show you something." She hesitated, smiling despite herself. "What kind of something?" "A surprise," he said. his tone light but sure. Trust me? Ava took a breath. I think I do. The next afternoon, Adrian met her outside the restaurant, dressed in the same casual simplicity she had come to recognize. He led her through quiet streets until they reached an old building near the river, a space that once housed a flower market. The air inside smelled faintly of paint and wood. This place is being renovated, he explained. I have access for a few months. I thought you might like to use it. She blinked, unsure she heard correctly. Use it? For what? For your art, he said. You once said you wanted to teach people who work night shifts. You could start here, weekends, evenings. I will handle the rent and supplies. Ava froze. Adrian, that is too much. I cannot let you. He shook his head. You can, because you deserve the chance to see what you are capable of. Oh, she looked around the dusty room, the empty walls waiting for color. Why are you doing this? Because you believe in everyone but yourself, he said quietly. The words hit deeper than she expected. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she reached for her sketchbook and smiled. All right, but I will pay you back someday. I will hold you to that, he said. Over the next few weeks, the once empty market bloomed with light and laughter. Ava painted the walls, repaired tables, and began teaching small classes to workers from nearby shops. Adrian stopped by often, helping with lights or moving easels, always pretending to be just another volunteer. Sometimes, when she caught him watching her from across the room, she felt her heart tighten. He was always kind, always calm, but there was something in his eyes, something unspoken. One evening, as the last students left, she found him hanging a string of warm lights near the window. The sunset poured through the glass, painting him in gold. You did not have to do that, she said softly. I like helping here, he said. It feels real. Ava tilted her head. Real? He nodded. Most of my days are spent in meetings and numbers. Here, things are simpler. You create something that makes people feel human again. She leaned against the table, watching him. You talk like someone who has everything but still feels empty. He gave a quiet laugh. Maybe that is closer to the truth than you think. Before she could ask what he meant, the sound of her phone alarm broke the moment. That is my signal. Night shift again. He smiled. Then I will walk you. They stepped out into the cooling air. Streetlights flickered on one by one. The city buzzed, alive and distant all at once. Ava walked beside him, the evening quiet stretching between them. I wish I could stay here, she admitted. In this little bubble we built, it feels safe. Maybe safety is not about walls, Adrian said. Maybe it is about people. She looked at him, her heart unsteady. For a second, the world went silent except for the steady rhythm of their steps. When they reached the corner, where they always said goodbye, Ava turned to him. Thank you, Adrian, for everything. He met her eyes. You do not have to thank me. Still, she did. And as she walked away, scarf fluttering in the wind, Adrian stood under the streetlight, hands in his pockets, watching her disappear into the crowd. He had meant to keep his distance, to keep his secret, but it was getting harder every day. The longer he spent with her, the more he realized that her laughter was the only sound that cut through the noise of his carefully built world. He knew it was only a matter of time before she learned the truth, and when she did, everything between them might break. Days turned into weeks, and the little art studio by the river became a quiet haven for Ava and the people who came after long shifts. Workers, taxi drivers, and nurses filled the space with laughter and color. Every class ended with smudged fingers, warm coffee, and the kind of joy that had nothing to do with money. Adrian came often, always helping quietly. He fixed broken chairs, carried canvases, and sometimes just stood by the window watching her teach. The way she spoke to her students with patience and light made him see something he had forgotten in his world of power and numbers. One evening, as the class ended, Ava found Adrian cleaning paintbrushes at the sink. You really do not need to do that, she said, smiling. He looked up, his sleeves rolled up, hands stained with blue paint. I like feeling useful. You are more than useful, she said softly. You are the reason this place exists. He paused, meeting her eyes. No, Ava, you are the reason it is alive. The words hung in the air between them. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. The city outside hummed like distant music. Ava stepped closer, close enough to see the faint shadows of exhaustion under his eyes. "You never talk about your job," she said carefully. "What do you really do?" Adrian hesitated, then smiled in that same unreadable way. "Let us just say I work with people. I help build things." "Like what?" she asked. He glanced toward the wall where her students' paintings hung simple scenes of everyday life. "Like dreams," he said finally. Her heart fluttered at the sincerity in his tone. She wanted to ask more, but something about the softness in his expression made her stop. Later that night, when she locked the studio, he walked her home. The streets glowed with lamplight, the air cool and gentle. At her door, she turned to him. "You have changed my life, Adrian," she said quietly. "Before you, I felt invisible." He looked down at her, a faint sadness in his eyes. "You were never invisible. The world just forgot how to look." For a long moment they stood there, the city fading into silence around them. Then he took a slow breath. "Ava, if you ever found out something about me, something unexpected, would you still see me the same way?" She frowned. "What kind of something?" "Nothing bad," he said quickly. "Just different." She smiled. "I do not care what you do or where you live. You are the same person who cleaned a table with me on a rainy night. That is all that matters." His jaw tightened slightly, emotion flickering across his face. He wanted to tell her the truth, but fear held him back. "Good night, Ava," he said finally. "Good night, Adrian." As he walked away, his phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from his assistant flashed across the screen. "Reminder, press conference tomorrow morning. Venue Vale Group Headquarters." He stopped under the streetlight, looking back at her window glowing faintly in the distance. The life he lived in suits and boardrooms felt like another planet compared to the warmth of her little world. Ava watched from behind the curtain as his figure disappeared into the night. She did not know who he truly was, but she felt certain of one thing. Whoever he was, he carried a secret that could change everything. And yet, she still hoped he would come back tomorrow. The morning of the charity gala arrived bright and clear, the kind of spring day that made the city sparkle. Ava had been hired by the event company to help with the catering. It was just another side job, she told herself. Another night of serving champagne to people who would never remember her name. The venue was stunning crystal chandeliers, silver linens, and walls of glass overlooking the Hudson River. She adjusted her black uniform, tied her apron, and tried not to feel small. Then she froze. On one of the giant posters near the entrance, printed in elegant gold letters, was the name of the event's host, Vale Group Annual Charity Gala. Beneath it, the line read, "Special Guest of Honor, Adrian Vale, Chief Executive Officer." For a moment, she could not breathe. The name echoed in her head. Adrian Vale. The man who had helped her clean tables, who brought her coffee, who believed in her dream. Her hands trembled as she stared at the poster, every piece of the puzzle snapping together. It was him. Her heart pounded, anger and disbelief twisting in her chest. Why had he lied? Why had he let her think he was just another ordinary man? Inside the ballroom, cameras flashed as elegant guests arrived. The music swelled, a soft orchestra filling the air. Ava tried to stay focused, balancing trays of glasses, but her eyes kept darting toward the stage. Then, he appeared. Adrian walked onto the platform, dressed in a black suit that fit perfectly, confidence radiating from every step. The crowd erupted in applause. He smiled politely, but his eyes searched the room and found her. For a second, time stopped. Ava looked away, her throat tight. "Good evening," Adrian began, his voice calm and steady. "Tonight, we celebrate compassion and opportunity, the chance to help others build the future they deserve." His words floated through the room, but to Ava they sounded distant, hollow. Every syllable stung. When he finished speaking, she slipped out to the hallway, needing air. The corridor was empty and quiet. She leaned against the wall, fighting the sting in her eyes. Then footsteps echoed behind her. "Ava," his voice called softly. She turned. "So it is true," she said, her tone shaking. "Chief Executive Officer Adrian Vale." He stopped a few feet away. "I wanted to tell you." "When?" she cut in. "Before or after you bought my life like another one of your projects?" "That is not what this is," he said, his voice low. "I never meant to deceive you. I just wanted you to know me before the name, before the title." She laughed bitterly. You mean before I realized I was just another story for your next speech? Ava, please. Everything I did was real. The studio, the classes, the time with you, it was all real. But it was built on a lie, she whispered. He stepped closer, desperate. I did not lie about what mattered. She took a breath, blinking back tears. Maybe not, but you hit it, and that hurts even more. The sound of music from the ballroom faded behind them as silence filled the hall. Ava turned away, gripping her apron. Congratulations, Mr. Vale. I hope your world of chandeliers and headlines keeps you warm. She walked past him without another word. Adrian stood alone in the corridor, watching her leave, the applause from the ballroom echoing like a cruel reminder. For the first time in years, the man who had everything felt completely powerless. The night after the gala, rain poured hard against Ava's window. She sat at her kitchen table, the sketchbook open but untouched. The pages that once brought her comfort now felt empty. The note Adrian had written, "Do not stop drawing," lay torn in half beside her cup of cold tea. Maya knocked gently on her door. "You want to talk about it?" Ava shook her head. "There is nothing to talk about. He lied. He let me think he was just a kind stranger. The truth is, he owns half the city." Ugh. Maya sighed. "Maybe he did not mean to hurt you." Ava's voice broke. "Then why does it hurt this much?" She closed the sketchbook and stared at her hands, still stained faintly with paint. The studio was supposed to open again in the morning, but she did not know if she could face it. Every wall, every chair, every color had his fingerprints. At that same hour, across the city, Adrian stood in his penthouse office, the lights of Manhattan stretching below him like 1,000 mirrors. He should have felt accomplished, the gala had been a success, but all he could see was the way Ava had looked at him before she walked away. His assistant entered quietly. "Sir, the press wants a quote about your community art initiative." "Not now," Adrian said, his voice hollow. "Sir, there is another matter," the assistant continued. "The restaurant manager who oversaw the event tonight, he told the press about a waitress who caused a scene with you. It is spreading online." "Oh." Adrian's head snapped up. "What?" "They are calling it a scandal. He implied she tried to use you." Adrian's expression hardened. "Shut it down immediately. Find out which outlet published it." Within an hour, his legal team was on the phones. But the damage was already spreading headlines, twisting the story into gossip. "Waitress flirts her way into CEO's charity event." The next morning, Ava walked to the studio and found whispers waiting for her. Some of her students avoided her eyes. Others asked carefully, "Is it true?" She forced a smile, pretending not to hear, but inside her chest everything cracked. She locked herself in the storage room and sat on the floor, tears falling silently. Moments later, the door opened. Adrian stood there, rain dripping from his coat. His eyes were tired but determined. "Ava," he said quietly, "I had no idea this would happen. Someone twisted the story, but I swear I am fixing it." She stood, anger replacing the ache. "Fixing it? You cannot fix how people look at me now. They think I was using you. They think everything I did was for money." "I will tell them the truth," he said. "No," she whispered. "You have already said enough." He reached for her, but she stepped back. "You do not understand, Adrian. My art was the only thing that felt pure. Now it feels dirty. You turned my dream into a headline." His face fell. "That was never my intention." "Maybe not," she said, "but intentions do not change what you destroyed." Silence filled the small room. The smell of wet paint hung in the air. "I think you should go," she said finally. He nodded slowly, his throat tight. "If that is what you want." When he left, she collapsed into the chair he had built weeks before, the wood still warm from his touch. The storm outside roared, drowning her quiet sobs. Somewhere beyond the rain, Adrian stood under the awning, looking back through the window at the woman who had changed everything. He wanted to fix it all, to start again. But for the first time, he realized something terrifying. His name, his power, his money, none of it could reach her now. A week passed. The rain stopped, but the silence between them remained. Ava kept the studio doors locked, avoiding calls, messages, and the world that suddenly felt too loud. Yet the city whispered her story anyway, an ordinary girl and a powerful man, a tale everyone twisted but few understood. Meanwhile, Adrian spent every waking hour trying to make things right. The manager who had leaked the false story was removed from his position, and the press was forced to retract their articles. Still, none of it mattered. Clearing her name in public did not erase the pain he had caused in private. One evening, Ava received an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was an invitation printed on heavy paper. The heading read, "The Art of Ava Reed, a private exhibition presented by Vale Foundation." Her heart stopped. The date was tomorrow. She almost tore it apart. But something inside her, some small flicker of curiosity, kept her from doing it. The next day, she walked into the old gallery downtown, the same one she used to pass on her way home from work, never imagining she would see her name on its door. Inside, the walls glowed with soft golden light. Her paintings filled the room, each one carefully framed, each one signed with her name. Sketches she had left behind in the studio, even the wine-stained towel, hung in the center like a crown jewel. Adrian stood across the room, hands folded, waiting. When he saw her, he took a slow step forward. "I know you did not want to see me," he said quietly. "But this was never about me. It was about you. You deserve to be seen for who you are." Ava's voice trembled. "You had no right to take my work." "I did not take it," he said. "I protected it. When people tried to destroy your name, I wanted to remind them who you really are. Someone who turns pain into art." She looked around the room, at the faces of strangers staring in awe at her paintings. Some of them were her students, standing proudly. Tears filled her eyes. "This is your story, Ava," he said, "not mine." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she stepped closer, her voice softer. "You did not buy my forgiveness tonight." "I did not come for forgiveness," he replied. "I came to give you back your light." The crowd began to applaud as she turned to the final piece, the framed towel with its faded pattern of wine and coffee. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "The mistake that changed everything." Ava wiped her eyes. For the first time in weeks, she felt peace, not because he had fixed her life, but because she had reclaimed it. When she turned back to him, her voice was calm. "Maybe it was never about lies or names. Maybe it was about learning what truth really looks like." Adrian nodded. "And what does it look like?" She smiled faintly. "Like this. Honest, messy, real." A month later, the studio by the river reopened, brighter than ever. New shelves lined the walls, filled with brushes and donated supplies. The laughter of students returned, soft and genuine, like sunlight after a long storm. Ava stood at the front of the room, watching them paint. The air smelled of turpentine and hope. She had rebuilt everything herself, this time with her own name on the door. The banner above read, "Open Hands Art Classes, founded by Ava Reed." No logos, no sponsors, no headlines, just art and heart. The bell at the door chimed. When she turned, Adrian stood there. No suit, no security, just a simple gray shirt and the same warm eyes she remembered. For a heartbeat, the room fell quiet. "You came," she said softly. "I was not sure I should," he replied. "But I wanted to see how you were doing." "I am good," she said. "Better, actually." He looked around the studio, pride shining in his eyes. "You did this on your own." Ava smiled gently. "Maybe not entirely. You helped me believe I could." For a moment, they stood in silence, the air thick with things unspoken. Then she reached into a drawer and pulled out something wrapped in soft paper. "I kept this," she said. Inside was the original towel, the faint marks of wine and coffee still visible. She had framed it again, this time with a small handwritten note. "The start of everything real." Adrian smiled, emotion flickering across his face. "You kept our mistake." "It was never really a mistake," she said. "Just fate wearing a different uniform." He took a slow breath. "Ava, I will not ask you to forget what happened, but if there is still space in your life for me, I would like to fill it not as a chief executive officer, not as a savior, just as a man who wants to be worthy of you." Her eyes softened. "Then come and see what real work looks like. The kids' class starts in an hour. We always need someone to clean brushes." He laughed quietly, nodding. "I think I can handle that." Later, when the class ended, the sun dipped low over the river. The room glowed with the golden light of evening. Adrian helped her stack chairs, their hands brushing once more. As they stood by the window, watching the city shimmer in reflection, he turned to her. "You know, I still have that sketch you made of me." "Then I guess we both kept souvenirs," she said. He smiled, taking her hand. "To the best mistake we ever made." Ava laughed softly, leaning against him. "To the beginning we never saw coming." Outside, the city buzzed quietly, unaware that somewhere above the river, two people who had once lived in different worlds had found their way back to each other not through power or pride, but through kindness, truth, and a little bit of fate.